Hi, good afternoon. I'm Deacon Ed Schoner, and we'll be starting the webinar. We'll give folks a couple seconds to log in, and we'll get going in a minute or so. So I think we'll get started. Again, like I said, I'm Deacon Ed Schoner. I'm here with Brianna Russell from Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries, and I'm glad you're here to join us. This is our third webinar. We plan on doing this every month for those of you that are interested in mental health ministry. We want to continue to build a series of webinars and different topics to support you in your ministry so that you have the skills and confidence to move ahead with with what I think God is calling all of us to do to build up this ministry within the church. So I'm so happy today to have Brianna with us. We, the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministries, we've joined with Sanctuary and partnering with them on a number of new initiatives, which Brianna will discuss later on in the presentation. But the way we came upon Sanctuary initially was because of their wonderful series, Sanctuary for Catholics, which I think a number of you have used in your ministry already. And the purpose of this webinar is to introduce that Catholic Sanctuary for Catholics to the rest of you to see if you'd like to use it in your ministry. Let me give you a little bit on Brianna's background. I know you saw it in the email inviting you to this webinar, but Brianna is the engagement manager at Sanctuary. She's worked as a consultant speaker and connector for the nonprofit sector, including church ministries, for 2 decades. She must have started when she was about 8, I guess. So she's developed curriculums, establishing youth programs, and grown an international medical institute, fostering her love for art. Her most recent role was as a gallery curator. Her undergraduate work focused in international studies, and she holds a master's in theological studies. Throughout her roles, Brianna's passion remains a genuine love for people, their stories, and the ability to connect. And I can attest to Brianna's passion for this work. She's very passionate about it, and that's wonderful to see, as I'm sure many of us are in this ministry. We are particularly drawn to this ministry and are passionate about it because of our personal connections to people that live with mental illnesses, perhaps our own mental illnesses that we deal with, and certainly abiding in the presence of Christ as we carry out this ministry. So I will turn this over to you, to Brianna, to give a rundown of what Sanctuary is, the Sanctuary for Catholic course, and some of our partnerships that we're working on. And I know folks can, give comments in the chat room, and we'll have time at the end of this presentation. Be about 45 to 60 minutes or so, somewhere in that time period, to have time to answer questions and comments. So good to have you with us, Brianna. And
thank you, Deacon Ed. Thank you so much. Just to clarify, I started in my early 20s, so 2 decades. It's fair. And the one thing that's not included in my introduction, but I feel like I should share just because I may get out of breath, is that I'm 8 months pregnant with my 4th son. So sometimes I just need to take another breath because there's a baby pushing on all the lungs.
Suddenly duck out, we understand. We hope that doesn't happen the next
No. No, hopefully not. It's such a joy to be with you, Deacon Ed, and I am so grateful for the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministers and the work that you're doing. And it's been so encouraging to me as a Catholic who has long desired to see these conversations come to the forefront of our church. So this is just such a joy to be with you all. I'm coming to you from West Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. And miraculously, the sun is shining today. So I feel like this is a very good sign already as we get started. I think from my perspective, today I'd like to share with you 2 things. The first will be a bit more brief, but to introduce you first to us, to Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries, to give you a bit of a sense of where we're coming from, how this began, and our purpose for speaking into these conversations within the church. And then second, as Deacon Ed mentioned, is to introduce the Catholic course to you. If you've already used it, thank you so much. If you haven't, I hope this gives you some sense of the way it can be a tool for you, freely distributed tool for you to begin conversations as you build your ministry within your church. So those are our two goals, and I hope we'll accomplish them within the time limit. I'm pretty sure we will. So we're going to just move on here. So Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries began, as most things do, as Deacon Ed mentioned, with a passion. And it began with Reverend Dr. Sharon Smith, who had her own experience of living with mental health challenges in her loved ones. And she also was doing a PhD on occupational therapy on how people were living with schizophrenia. She also did a master's, where myself and most of our team actually did a master's at Regent College. So there was a culmination of this intense research that she was doing, the lived experience that she had in loving and caring for someone who was living with a mental health challenge, and a theology that was robust and wanted to speak into these areas. So in that, she started a small organization in 2011 that began here in Vancouver that started delivering sermons and workshops to churches around the area. So that continued for about 7 years, and it grew, and there was such a great need. But as it grew, we began to see that we weren't able to send people into all churches. There just wasn't enough of us. There wasn't enough of us, and there also wasn't the empowering that we believe churches should have to have these conversations without an expert coming in. Not that we're all experts, but just to be able to have a grassroots conversation about mental health and faith. So out of this 7 years of research, over 120 churches were polled. And what we discovered was we had enough for a course, the Sanctuary course. And that course was created in 2018, and it covered 8 topics. Those 8 topics, just to be clear, include lived experience and expert testimony. So it includes theologians, psychologists, and people living with mental health challenges. So this was an ecumenical resource. And at the beginning, we charged for it a very minimal amount. But again, we wanted it to be accessible to all. So the next step was making the course free. After that, we saw a great need specifically within the Catholic Church. Our first resource was ecumenical. So there were Catholic churches using it, but some of the feedback that we heard was that it needed to be more theologically rooted in church tradition. And so we were really excited by that, and we began embarking on creating the Sanctuary course for Catholics. It was released this past year in 2021, and the uptake has been incredible. We're so delighted that it's available in different countries. It is available on different platforms. And again, it's all for free. So what is the course, and why do we think that it's so important? It began again with Dr. Sharon Smith's 2 sort of ideas: lived experience and the ability to have greater conversations that reduce stigma and supported the church. So we recognized within the church a deep need to speak into these conversations. So the Sanctuary course was born. I think all of you will probably recognize this need that Sanctuary saw as well. You see it in your own lives. We know, according to the World Health Organization, that 1 in 4 people are affected by mental health problems at some point in their lives. So that's either through personal experience or through the diagnosis of a friend or relative. So that's a staggering amount. I can't see how many people are present here, but I imagine if we went through all the people here, we would easily be able to count off 1 in 4. And given that you're here, the stat's probably much higher than that. But there is a need there. We all recognize it. And how are we responding to it? Why Sanctuary? Well, Archbishop Aquila of Denver said, now more than ever, there's a need for the tools to equip the faithful to understand mental health, whether it be for their own benefit or in relation to others. I'm pleased to see the release of the Sanctuary course for Catholics. It's a great resource for the church, and I'm confident that it will help many individual Catholics and parishes navigate mental health questions. And I think I'll just put in a little caveat here, which I sort of mentioned at the beginning. We intend this not to be to create experts in mental health. This does not require expertise in any field. There is no requirement for diagnosis or for interventions. This is a tool which allows us to speak, to accompany, to companion, to be present to, and to create a sanctuary in our church simply by having the conversations. So as an organization that longs to bring these conversations to the forefront, Sanctuary has 5 values that we try and practice as an organization. And I just want to mention these because I think it's helpful to know who's providing the resource. We're all people who, again, as Deacon Ed said, are passionate about this for our own reasons. But we're also people who have a deep sense that Christ is moving in this area and that he desires to love well those who are living with mental health challenges and those who are supporting people with mental health challenges. So for us, our 5 values that we try and live by organizationally, which may be worth noting, are that we always try and practice compassion. So that's in the way we deliver our course. We try and make it as accessible as possible. So we have subtitles on all of it. If you don't want to watch the films because you find them too emotionally provocative, we have scripts for them. We try and just overcome as many of the barriers as possible to get the content into the hands of people who want to learn from it. And that is rooted in compassion. We also, secondly, desire to cultivate hope. I think on a personal level, hope is one of those things that can be really difficult in this time. I don't know if you've been watching the news on Canada right now, but our country is experiencing turmoil like we haven't for a very long time. And hopelessness seems to prevail in many situations. So as an organization, part of our mission and part of our value is to cultivate hope wherever we go. And if you choose to implement the course in your parish, we hope that it is an offering of hope, pun intended. Our next value that we try and adhere to here at Sanctuary is that we cultivate relationships. So our course is intended to not be done as individuals, but to be done as a community, to be done in small groups. And that's because we believe so fervently in the beauty and the redemption of relationships. If we look at the gospel, when Christ interacted with a person and he healed them, he didn't just heal them, he always restored right relationship. It was like the second part, and sometimes the primary part of his act of healing was to restore right relationship. So we treasure building relationships, and that's really important to us. And that's part of the way that the course was designed. We also attempt and do our best to pursue excellence in everything. And that attests to the fact that this course is rigorously researched. So we have done a lot of research. Dr. John Swinton of the University of Aberdeen is one of our ambassadors, and probably the leading theologian when it comes to mental health and faith. And he's just brilliant. And so a lot of our work is based on his research, but also looking at a larger scale. What is the newest research available to us? And we try and do that to create something beautiful, but also to create excellent work. And our final value at Sanctuary is that we intend to demonstrate integrity. And this is something, again, that we like to see in the course. We hope that as you choose or don't choose to facilitate the course, it's done with a sense of this is coming from a place of desiring to help, a place of wanting to walk alongside those who are living with mental health challenges. So that, I think, is probably enough about our organization, just who we are. We're a small team, still under 20 employees. But we have an office in the UK now. We're growing exponentially. Deacon Ed is helping us to even reach Europe. So Moldova, of all places, is going to be using the course. And we're really excited about what the future holds, as long as we continue to stand by these values that I've mentioned. So who is the course for? That's the next question. Introducing the course, who is it for? I've mentioned that parishes are using it. I've mentioned that it ought to be done in small groups rather than individually. But is it for pastors? Is it for our deacons? Is it for our religious educators? Is it for youth groups? Who are the people who we want to use this course? Well, broadly speaking, I will say the course is for everyone. So the course is not just for those who are living with mental health challenges, but those who are also caring for those with mental health challenges. And I think one of the points of the course is to recognize that we all have mental health. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but nobody escapes. This is a beautiful quote by Henry Nouwen. Nobody escapes being wounded. We are all wounded people, either physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. The main question is not how can we hide our wounds so we don't have to be embarrassed, but how do we put our woundedness in the service of others? When wounds cease to be a source of shame, they become a source of healing, and we have become wounded healers. And that concept is beautiful because I think it addresses questions of, can I run the sanctuary course? Me, a wounded person who isn't an expert, who maybe has my own mental health challenges, can I run the sanctuary course? Can I facilitate it in my parish? The resounding answer is yes, please do. Let us all become wounded healers. And recognizing that we are wounded healers, let this be an experience of Christ's love in such a profound and personal way through the course. So people with questions about mental health are welcome to the course. Mental health professionals are welcome to join the course. Clergy, oh, how I would love it if more clergy joined the course. People supporting loved ones with mental health challenges, and people living with mental health challenges. And you can imagine if you had all those people around a table sharing their experiences, what a joy it would be, how much we would learn from each other. And that's key as we keep talking about the course, how we learn from each other. So let's press into just 3 of the ways that the course might serve your parish. It was created with 5 key objectives: to raise awareness, I've sort of talked about that, and start conversations; to provide an opportunity to learn through lived experience; to reduce the stigma surrounding mental illness in the church; and to share basic principles for offering care and support; and to increase awareness of mental health resources and how to access them. So the 3 ones that I'd like to talk with you about today are how to learn through lived experience, to reduce stigma, how we achieve that in the course, or we aim to achieve that, and some basic principles for offering care and support. And these are all featured in the course. So this is a little bit of a teaser. We won't go into them in as much detail as we do in the course. We won't do any of the activities. We won't have any of the conversation around it. But I hope that it gives you a sense of how our course is built and how you can interact with it in your parish. I love this quote too. Discipleship is a journey. We get to walk towards Jesus together and meet in a gracious space where people say, I hear you, and I am willing to walk with you. One of the important parts of learning from people with lived experience of mental health is that we come to hear them. We learn to listen well. And I don't know about you, but I find in this day and age, listening well can be a challenge, particularly as we talk about mental health problems. Sometimes we approach it with our preconceived ideas of what things look like, what a person living with schizophrenia looks like. And we forget to hear them and to listen to them as whole people. So part of this adhering and attending to people with lived experience is that we don't just see their diagnosis, but we see them as whole people. And community is truly based on our ability to hear and walk alongside each other. So I'm not going to say more about that. I'm going to share a lived experience story, which is taken from session 4 in our course. A lovely woman named Simone from the UK. So if you can't hear this, I don't know, maybe just sing out or tell Kate or something.
I was asleep and I had a visit, and the voice said, I am the Alpha and the Omega. And this man, very genteel, very striking eyes, very soft, very comforting manner, goes round this campfire and sat down, and he turned round to me and he said, why do you try to use big words? And I said, I don't mean to use big words. I don't understand big words. people don't listen to me. He said, what do you mean? And I said, I find it very hard to put my point across on paper, let alone in speaking to somebody. He went, you'll be heard. He said, try to be yourself and be honest with yourself and true. You won't remember everything what I say to you. We got up and he was walking away, and as he was waving, and I went, oh my gosh, I know who you are. I went, you're Jesus. And he waved and he went like that as he was walking away. And I thought, I've just been visited by Jesus. I've been visited by his angels. I've been visited by God himself. I've heard God, I've heard Our Lady. Living with schizophrenia and knowing that God is by your side is a positive aspect. He may not answer you as an immediate solution, but the end result can be more rewarding than what you can ever anticipate. It's taken me to here, so I'm going to be heard. So Jesus was right. It's nice to have somebody to listen to you within the church and to help you to grow, to learn, to adapt, and to live with schizophrenia, and to live with the faith that I have, that God's by my side. I was asleep.
Great. Just catching up on the slides there. Every time I hear Simone's little excerpt there, I'm just deeply moved for many reasons in what she says. The power of ensuring that we hear from her, the beauty of recognizing that people living with something like schizophrenia can find positives whilst living with schizophrenia, and the ability for us to minister to those around us to ensure they can sense and feel and know Christ's closeness to them. Just, it's so encouraging and it's so beautiful. And I think that that's what propels us to keep doing this work. Perhaps you're in the same situation, but for me, that it's just incredibly moving that we're able to hear from people like Simone. So the second thing is, not only do we intend to listen well, as we know, listening is only one part of it. The other equation is speaking well. So as Christians, we know that our words matter, that the word matters, the word of God matters, and that in Genesis, we have a beautiful account of being commissioned to give names to things, to rightly name things as Christ and as God sees them. And so I think the power of our words is very important when we're speaking about mental health. So when we talk about reducing stigma in our course, part of the way we do that is through our language. And the other part of it is recognizing this continuum that's up on the screen right now. So this is one of the key learnings from our course, I think, that I hear most often has really helped people understand it. And it centers on the fact that we all have mental health. Sometimes we think, oh, that's a mental health issue, or that's a mental health challenge, or that's a mental health illness. But we don't assume a starting point of all being together. Mental health is a great equalizer. We all have mental health. And this continuum puts it in a different perspective. Rather than having someone with mental health challenges being separate from the rest of us, we see each other all together. So this is really interesting. We speak in terms of flourishing mental health and languishing mental health. And you'll note on the chart, or on the diagram, that you can be thriving with illness. you can also be surviving without illness. So you can experience languishing mental health without illness. You can have seasons and periods that have either external or internal reasons that put you somewhere on this quadrant. A great exercise is to just take a moment and to look and say, where am I on this quadrant right now? Where do I find myself? And then to recognize that if you were to envision this, God would be a big circle around all of this. He's encompassing all of this mental health. So when we speak about mental health, we speak from a place of community. We all have mental health. And then there's some more specifics that we encourage, language shifts through the course. We use first-person language. So you'll notice as I was speaking, I would say Sarah lives with schizophrenia rather than Simone is schizophrenic. I would say that a person is experiencing periods of psychosis rather than that person is psychotic. So the way we use it puts the person ahead of the illness or the diagnosis or the experience. And this is really key to us because as Catholics, we acknowledge the dignity of the human person, and that dignity is not with or without mental health illnesses. That dignity is inherent. And so we want to see them first as people, and then secondarily as with the experiences that they're having that are pertinent to this conversation. Another way that we challenge language and the way we speak is to use value neutral terminology. And I think as Catholics, when we have such a robust theology of suffering, this one can be quite tricky to adjust because for myself, I will often jump to Simone, for example, struggles with schizophrenia. And so in that shift from living with schizophrenia to struggling with, I've assigned value to her experiences. And as she just shared, there are positives to her experience of mental health illness. And that can be really difficult for us to figure out. And it can be really difficult for us to navigate. But it comes back to that ability to listen well. If a person says, I'm suffering from depression, we would say, of course, you're suffering from, that's how you are experiencing it. But if a person says, going back to the continuum, I am experiencing depression, but I'm thriving. My mental health is flourishing right now, but I live with depression. To say they're struggling with it might not be true in that moment. And we want to hear from them first about how they are living with their mental health challenge. So those are two ways that we really try and end stigma by understanding that we all have mental health, and then the language with which we express mental health challenges shifts. So those are two things we explore in the course. The third thing that we're going back to that slide about our ambition is to provide some ways of practical support that you can practice in your parishes. And we touch on that in the course as well. And for us, that comes down to this idea of companionship. Again, you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be trained in interventions or in diagnosis. You just need to walk alongside people. So companionship offers presence rather than solutions. In companionship, you need not have all the answers, provide a diagnosis, or resolve every problem. You simply need to make space and time for another person. And that's a great learning that I hope comes from the course. So in the course, we break it down into 5 different ways. Companionship includes radical hospitality. Companionship includes neighboring. And neighboring is really fascinating, which you would learn in the course if you haven't already done it or if you want to explore it more. It's a beautiful idea of neighbors assumes a similar position. So it's a sharing of land in a sense. We're in the same place, but how we respond and how we approach it could be different. So that idea of neighboring, living alongside people is really important. Companionship includes adopting a side-by-side perspective. I see this a lot with my 3 boys. If we're at a viewpoint and they want to see, they try and stand in front of each other. They want the best view possible and they fight for it. But what's really beautiful is when they stand side by side, each of them sees something different, when they're looking out at the view. And that side-by-side perspective allows us to actually see more and attend to more in what we're taking in. So companionship really attempts to stand side by side with those living with mental health challenges. Companionship includes listening, and companionship includes accompaniment. So how do we achieve all of these things in the course? That's a great question. And again, it's 8 sessions, small groups. We have films that happen with it, but our core content is based on 3 perspectives. And I just want to share those with you in conclusion, just so you have a sense of what it would look like to do the course. The first is the psychological perspective, and that's the study of the human mind and its functions, especially for those that affect our behavior. So this is the treatment and the study of mental health problems. We try and do the psychological through lived experience. Again, that's our approach to it. The next core content perspective is social. And that's the idea that mental health affects not just the individual, but the community in which they live, the family, their loved ones. And recent research suggests that the way that they live in community affects their mental health and their recovery specifically. So it's a key component. And finally, the theological perspective. Sometimes I feel the need to explain the word theology. The study of God. So the sense of how does our understanding and study of God inform and inspire the way we speak, live, and support those with mental health challenges. So part of the magic of the Sanctuary course is that all of these things are explored, and we have an opportunity for dialogue. But the real beauty is the fact that we actually get to have an experience of what it means to accompany, what it means to walk alongside people through the course, through the small group, holding space for all of the different experiences to come to the fore. So that's why we recommend doing it with others. And just to give you one more little bit of you really want to do this, I have a trailer for you of the Catholic course, so you can have a bit more of a sense of what we're talking about.
I was experiencing suicidal thoughts. It would be better if I wasn't here. I'm really a burden on my family and I should just go away.
Heavenly Father, we come before you who have created us in your image and likeness.
I thought about dying. I just thought, what was the point? There's always something wrong with me. I can't be happy.
You have made us your sons and daughters.
Thoughts were going through my mind like, why are you here? What's the point?
We ask you, Lord, to strengthen us in our faith.
Nothing's wrong with you. You're being a little kid. You're being a baby. Get over it.
Continue to pour forth your healing spirit upon those who suffer from mental illness.
I was diagnosed with clinical depression. I saw that as something that was bad about me. If I just prayed hard enough and if I just did the right moves in my life, then God would take it away from me.
I think as Catholics, some of us can tend to over-spiritualize things and to underestimate the human and the natural.
When people might not fully understand the importance of mental health, they might say, yeah, well, maybe you just need to pray more, go to Mass more. If your faith were stronger, you wouldn't have these issues.
I'm a Christian, but I'm human. And if I can be physically ill, I can be mentally ill.
Too often when we're in a crisis, it feels like this is it. And if something doesn't happen right now, it will never be better. It's hard to see a way that this could be different. Hang in there, get help, because it really can be different.
I look up at the cross and I see Jesus' broken body. I know that he knows my suffering. He can understand what I've been through. He can understand what I will go through, and he's there for me.
There is a really profound truth that suffering unites us or pulls us closer to Christ. The connection between me and the rest of the body of Christ is real. Suffering united with the suffering of Christ actually has implications for the church.
Faith is about me and God in the context of community, to be known by each other, to support each other, to help each other.
In relationship, that is where profound healing takes place. We're never called by God to walk through this life alone.
When there is a hand that can guide you through God, it will be inspiring to know that there's someone there who may be able to help you.
You're not alone. That's the biggest thing I could say is you're not alone.
So those are some of the take-homes, some of the teasers of the course that I wanted to share with you today in the context of helping you understand who we are and why we're offering what we're offering. We really want to encourage the learning of listening well to those with lived experience, to speak well and into people's experiences, people's challenges, people's living with mental health problems. And then we also want to foster ways of accompaniment and of companionship, to walk alongside them. As they said in the video, we can do healing in community. And so if you'd like to explore the course for Catholics, we would love for you to access it. There's a few ways that you can do so. Again, it's free, so you can download it with all of the videos by subscribing through our website, sanctuarymentalhealth.org. And that gives you access to everything, all the different avenues. The second way you can do it is you can access it through Formed if you have access to that platform in your parish. It's all available there as well with the downloads for the course book. You can purchase, the course book in a beautiful printed format. The ecumenical version doesn't have this, so I feel like we're quite fortunate as Catholics that we do have the beautiful printed version. And there's spots for notes, there's discussion questions in each chapter, and it's just a really beautiful guide. It includes a facilitator's guide, so you can get a greater sense of how you might be able to use this. And again, a reminder that it's for everyone. So we come as wounded healers. We come with our own scars or wounds, whether they be open or healed, to this conversation. I'm always personally so encouraged that when Christ came back and appeared to his disciples, resurrected, he still had wounds. And I think that's really powerful to keep in mind, because our wounds, our woundedness can be part of God's redemption and God's restoration in our lives too. And so to hold on to that if you want to explore that. I think I have 1 minute left, but I wanted to also talk about the ways we're working with Deacon Ed and the Association of Catholic Mental Health Ministries, because I am so excited about that. The two resources that are going to bear so much fruit in the church. The first is films based on when a loved one dies by suicide. And Deacon Ed, you can share with us a little bit more. This is based on a book that you put together with Bishop Dolan. And it's conversations with people who have lost loved ones to suicide, and the church's response and their own journeys of recovery and living with this reality. And the second one is a resource for parishes on how to start mental health ministries within their parish. So another really great resource that we're creating films for that will be out in the next year. So we're looking forward to that. But that concludes my presentation. I hope there's lots of questions because I've left time for them. But I also hope that you feel inspired to run this. 8 sessions, small groups. It's all ready for you. It's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But it is a great way to begin preparing your parish or giving them language to begin a mental health ministry.
Thanks, Kate. Kate, could you bring us up there, Kate? I don't know if we both.
Yeah, you can both be on the screen now. And we do have one question.
Okay.
And is this course available in Spanish?
Great question. It is. So it is not, unfortunately, available for download yet. on our website, but it is available through Formed in Spanish. So everything has been translated. The videos are really well dubbed. You can't even tell that it's the same people speaking. You would think that they're just fluent in Spanish, but it is available through Formed. And if you can't access it through Formed, I'd encourage you just to send me an email, and I'll see if I can get it to you, even though it's not on our website.
Well, thanks, Brianna. That's a wonderful presentation. I know a number of our folks in the ministry have already been using the sanctuary course, and it's the sort of thing that you can run in a parish hall, you can run in the basement of the rectory, you can even do it in small group gatherings in homes. It's you can pull it up, I guess, on a laptop or project it on a screen is what you can do with it, and the written course material that comes along with it. I'm correct, you can download that as a PDF. You don't have to buy the book.
No, you don't.
Okay, because I know that would be important to a lot of folks that you can pull that up.
Yeah.
Itself.
Yep, it's all available there. And it's interesting, Deacon Ed, the way like parishes that are using it, we'd love to hear from you. If you are using it already, we'd love to know what responses you've had to it, if there's any ways that you see it being improved. Additionally, I'd love to hear how it has facilitated conversation in your parish. What's been most influential for you? Has it been perhaps the listening, the practical guides, the language? What's been helpful to you?
Yeah, and the other thing I would say about this, the sanctuary course, is if you're wondering how to get started, to get the ministry started in your parish, this kind of answers that question for you. If you're uncertain or uncomfortable about wanting to start live presentations in your parish, this is kind of like ready-made to get the conversation going. And the last session, maybe you can describe the last session, session number 8, a little bit, Brianna. It is about starting to think through what your next steps are. And that's one of the things that we're in partnership with you on, is to provide, a framework to answer that question, because this series isn't really a how to do it series. So the series we're working with you guys on is to try to get in a little bit more into the how do you do the practical aspects of doing a mental health ministry. So maybe if you could just briefly describe the last session 8, as to the objectives of it.
Yeah, for sure. So I have it here just because my pregnancy brain doesn't always help me remember everything. So session 8 is really a bit of a summary of it all. But we talk about ways your faith community can support individuals facing mental health problems, and how can we encourage recovery. So we talk about hope, identity, and responsibility and community. So those sort of ideas. And what I love about this is, I think you're right, Deacon Ed, in that we really hand it back to the parish. And the unfortunate part of that is that perhaps they feel like, what's next? Right. There is a lot of individuality to it. And so in our conclusion, these are ways we hope you continue to have these conversations, or perhaps more specifically, an approach that we hope you adopt to having these conversations. But building a mental health ministry can be so specific to different parishes. I love the story, Deacon Ed, of Claire in Houston, Texas, who does mental health bingo. And I think it's just such a creative way to encourage people to change their language. So she has definitions, she has ways of speaking included in that bingo. And it's just such a great tool. It's a way that a parish has said, okay, we have begun the conversation. How do we continue it? And in the pandemic, she said she would have picnic tables out all around the parish and invite the neighborhood to come play mental health bingo. So I think that there's a lot of room for individuality there. But one of the things that your parish resource will do will be able to help people plan it out more specifically. And I think that'll be really, really helpful. So look for that in the end of this year.
So talk about a great example of combining Catholic culture. I mean, there's always been this joke about Catholics and playing bingo. So this idea of combining the bingo stereotype with mental health ministry, that's wonderful what Claire's done.
Yeah.
down in Houston has a great ministry growing in an historically black parish, and it's wonderful to see. I see one of the questions here is, are each of these sessions standalone? How would you look at that?
Absolutely. So they're intended to be an hour to an hour and a half sessions that you could do on a weekly basis or a biweekly or monthly basis. They are standalone in the sense that they cover an entire topic, but they are bookended by the introduction, session 1, and the conclusion of how to go forward from here in session 8. But they really can be done standalone. The session 4 on stigma that features Simone's lived experience is incredibly powerful. And if you only had time for one, that might be a great place to start. Additionally, if there are things that you would like to do, perhaps have a weekend where you do all of it as a workshop or an introduction, that's possible too. But we found, and this again, I think is perhaps part of the tradition within Protestant churches, is that small groups work really well. So people have described the sanctuary course as the alpha course for mental health. And some churches we're finding actually run it every year so that people who are new can again take it as sort of an introduction. But yeah, it can stand alone, but there's many ways of doing it. And if you have any questions about that, I put my email in the chat, so you can email me if you're interested in maybe seeing how you could run it as a weekend seminar or in a different way. We'd love to talk about that too.
This other question that came up here, Brianna, is a question, those of us deeply involved in this ministry talk about this all the time. So maybe you can comment on it. It's, basically clergy being well-trained in understanding mental health issues. So one of the questions is, can we get this course placed in seminaries? Priests will deal with mental health in their parishes their whole life. I know that most seem to offer anything. So have you had any experience about clergy dealing with mental health issues and using sanctuary? Do you have any comment or thoughts on that?
I love this question because it would be my joy to see it in seminaries. We have had express interest from individual priests who have said the same thing. They recognize the need for it. And even in some leadership of the church, we have heard this. We haven't got it into seminaries yet. So if you have any ideas on how we might do that, I would love to have a follow-up conversation with you. I would love to see if we can find a way to do that. I do think it's imperative. There was a social worker in New York City, in the Bronx actually, who reached out and said that she had had an experience where she was invited to a Catholic family who one of their family members was experiencing a severe mental health crisis. And she said, you need to take them to the hospital immediately. And the family, being devout and beautiful Catholics, went to their parish priest first and said, should we actually take this person to the hospital? And I think that there is, the question was, there is a sense that priests are perhaps not as well equipped as they could be to sort of say, okay, this is not my area of expertise. Please do go listen to somebody whose expertise it is, like a social worker. But fortunately, he did say, yes, if she says go, go. But there's still this sense, we know through research, that 54% of people experiencing a mental health challenge go to their priest or to their church first. So we definitely need to increase mental health literacy amongst our church leaders. I'd love to get it into seminaries again. Just let us know how.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we try to do more broadly in the Catholic mental health ministry is that term you just used, increase mental health literacy. I know in my formation program for a deacon, we got very limited amount of information on mental health issues, and that's just the way it is at this point. But even if it's not officially part of the seminary curriculum, the priest and the students can always do sanctuary on their own as some sort of standalone, ongoing continuing education. It doesn't have to be geared specifically to seminaries to be a useful thing. So certainly would encourage that and again, to use sanctuary as a way to start up the conversation. we're coming to an end here pretty soon, so I just wanted to briefly talk a little bit more about the other resources you mentioned that we're developing, and I'm sure we'll have a webinar on them when they're more fully available. But the one is about suicide, and as you mentioned, Auxiliary Bishop Dolan from San Diego and I edited a book which with the contributors from around the U.S. who have lost someone to suicide, myself included. My daughter Katie died by suicide. Where it is going to be a wonderfully well-produced, top-quality video, just similar to what everyone just saw with the sanctuary courses, where, again, they can use it in small groups to discuss the experience of suicide, to be able to grieve and support each other in their grief, and also to understand where the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and Mary are with them in the midst of that grief. So it'll be really heavily lean on the Catholic theology of suffering and Christ being with us in our grief and somehow overcoming the grief, that death is not the end. So it's wonderful that you and the other folks at Sanctuary are developing that resource with us, and that'll be available in a couple months.
Yeah, and Deacon Ed, just to echo that, I have been with all of the interviewees thus far, and just hearing their stories and having the privilege of being able to hear Christ's accompaniment of them in those moments of grief and suffering has been so edifying to my own faith that I think that this is something the church needs so desperately, because even today there's so much stigma attached to suicide loss that this will be just such a gift to the church. And so I'm so grateful for you for writing the book and then and enabling us to share with you in producing this resource.
Yeah, it's important too that the ministers that are listening in, or the mental health ministers are listening in, that we'll continue to develop new resources because we need them in this ministry. It's still a very new ministry. We've only been at this a couple years. So we'll continue to develop new resources to support those of you that are interested in growing this ministry in the church. So with that, I think I will bring the webinar to a close. So I appreciate you very much taking the time to do this, Brianna. And I know your email address is up in the chat room, and there'll be some follow-up on our webpage. And I'm sure everyone here will get a follow-up email on where you can access this webinar on our webpage because it has been recorded, and how you can contact Brianna and the other good folks at Sanctuary Mental Health Ministries. So thank you very much, Brianna. And
thank
I'm sure
you,
you and I will be
Kate.
talking, and everyone's keep in touch.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thanks.